Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today. Hey everyone, hope everybody is doing well these holidays. Before we jump in, a quick note. Today's episode is a little different from what we usually do here at Ageless Athlete. Most weeks, you are hearing me in conversation with extraordinary athletes, thinkers, and adventurers. But this time, I am on the other side of the mic. Earlier this year, the Adventure Sports podcast interviewed me. And as we cross 100 episodes of Ageless Athlete, well, this one is number 103 to be exact. And it feels a bit surreal when I say it out aloud. Well, this feels like the right moment to share that conversation with you. And before we play it, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk directly with all of you, especially those of you who have been here since the early days, and also those of us who have found this show more recently. Thank you for being part of this weekly ritual. One episode every week without missing a single one for almost 2 years now. I really do take some pride in that consistency. But more than that, I am grateful that you show up for these stories, for the curiosity, and for the reminder that we can keep pushing, learning, and evolving no matter how old we might be. Right now, I'm actually recording this intro from my parents' home in Delhi, where I arrived just before Thanksgiving and where I am visiting for the holidays. And yes, my dog Raja is also here with me. Flew from San Francisco to Delhi, a total champ, made it across and is settling in beautifully, just like me, here for the holidays. Well, being here at home in my parents' guest bedroom, it has stirred up something unexpected, a kind of full circle moment, because this is exactly where the seed for Ageless Athlete was planted a little over 2 years ago. I was here back then. I wasn't living in a van or climbing across the West or interviewing elite performers. I was here in this house, spending long, quiet days recovering from this crippling shoulder injury that I got while on a bouldering trip in the upper reaches of the Himalayas in the region of Ladakh. I had been on this climbing trip and I hurt myself while trying to execute this boulder problem. My shoulder just gave away, and then I had to, I had to stop climbing and then come back to town. And I was trying to understand how to heal myself. So I was here Yes. And I had time on my hands, and I was learning that there didn't seem to be better guidance out there for active people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond who want to keep performing at a high level. Yes, I saw a ton of information online on all these advances in science and biology on how to expand your number of years, but I didn't see quite the same level of diligence on how to make our available years more healthful, more alive. And while I was struggling with my own little crisis here, trying to understand my injury and what it meant for my sporting life, I mean, what it meant for my life, because I just got so much out of the outdoors. And when I could not use my body the same way, it really felt like my own little, little crisis. So, yeah, I was online all the time, and I was poring over research papers, blogs, poring over forums, listening to podcasts, reading books, anything I could find, trying to make sense of how to stay strong and capable in this older body, trying to understand longevity, performance, training, recovery, mindset, motivation, all of it. And honestly, the internet did not have great answers, at least not the kind that connected science with lived experience. I kept thinking there must be people out there who have figured this out. People decades ahead of me in sport, still performing, still joyful, still pushing themselves. But where are their stories? Where do they share what they have learned? And that's really why Ageless Athlete began. Not because I had the answers, but because I did not. And I knew others didn't either. So I started asking questions. I found athletes who had lived through cycles of reinvention, athletes who knew how to adapt, evolve, and thrive with a changing body, with a maturing mind. And each week, those conversations became a kind of guide, not just for listeners, but honestly for me. Fast forward almost 2 years, and here we are, 103 episodes in, thousands of listeners tuning in from all parts of the world, and a community that has grown far bigger than I ever expected when I hit record for the first time. So, with all that context, today's episode feels like a time capsule, a conversation from May, just this current year, right around the moment when I was beginning the second part of my life on the road. I moved into my van in October of last year, and after a few months of traveling in the US, I spent a few months in Mexico, and we recorded this when I was coming back to the US halfway or 6 months into my trip. And yeah, a version of me was just starting to figure out what this next chapter might look like. So I'm sharing it because it gives you a window into my life, who I am, and what brought me to this point, and the curiosity, the questions, and the shifts happening under the surface. And the beginnings of the journey, I'm sharing it because it gives you a window into the early days. The curiosity, the questions, the shifts happening under the surface. Many of you have been with me since. So thank you truly for being here, whether you have listened to 103 episodes or this is your very first one. Your support has shaped this show in ways you may not realize. All right, well, let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Kurt from the excellent Adventure Sports Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this different angle and a glimpse into my life and the story behind Ageless Athlete.
Hi, friends. Thanks for joining us on the Adventure Sports Podcast again today. Today, I have Kush Kandilwal with us, and I did my best. I don't know how close I got on that last name, Kush, but Kush is the host of the Ageless Athlete podcast, but he is an adventurer of his own right. Rock climbing, biohacking, surfing. He does worldwide travels and adventures. And Kush, welcome to the program.
Good to be here, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you bet. So one thing that I really want to dive into this show is the idea of aging as an adventure athlete. And of course, it's a little close to home for me. I always joke that I'm 23 years old. And the reason I think that is, Kush, is because I feel like that's where my heart has been for many, many years, right? My 23rd year was probably the first year that I was truly on my own adulting after college. And for some reason, that age stuck. So I always tell people I'm 23 on the inside anyway. But the reality is I'm more than double that age now. And I am finding that adventure sports are a little different now than they were then. So I would love to dive into that with you, especially because I think you're perhaps somewhat of an expert here, the Ageless Athlete.
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this. I'm a learner. I'm a curious, motivated learner on how aging hits all of us, but how we can keep doing the things we love, despite whatever the years may bring to us, despite the changes that happen, despite what society tells us. And yeah, if we stay 23 inside, then we are already halfway there.
That's wonderful. And you know, adventure sports have been such a huge part of my own life and my own health, you know, both physically and emotionally. And also, I would say even in the way it's informed my life, right? Adventure sports have informed my life. And when I began to realize that my body wasn't necessarily keeping up like it once did, then it was a bit of a shocker to me, but it's no reason to stop. And so learning how to adventure in a body that doesn't get strong as quickly, doesn't heal as quickly, is a little bit more prone to injury, you know, those sorts of things. I think learning how to work with that process allows us to continue on for decades longer than a lot of people might. So that's where my mind is. What, Kush, has been your experience in, well, let's just take rock climbing, for example. Tell us the story of rock climbing as a young man and how now rock climbing has impacted, or how Father Time is treating that endeavor anyway.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. I was lucky to have discovered climbing in my teens, and then I took it with right earnest. when I left college and life placed me in a situation, placed me in a part of the world and this country where I had world-class rock climbing at my fingertips. So, yeah, some of the most obsessed times of my life, my mid to upper 20s. But, aging is not just about the body, it's also about the mind. I'm sure, as you know, you have been doing things for a while. And, I think at the core of it, as humans, we are addicted to growth and progression. And it is amazing when we are learning and growing into any new thing. And in this case, it's a sport. And at some point, you hit plateaus and your mind starts to unravel because what obsessed you in the past, those leaping through the grades, those don't come by as easily. So I hit some of those plateaus maybe a decade ago, and the body kind of followed. And in my case, I think aging physically affects us different ways. I hit my 40s. I started getting hit by injuries, and my motivation took a drop. And I think there is a strong mind-body connection. Sure. If you have this strong mind, you can will your body into doing unimaginable things. And I hit this stopping point. I had a moment of reckoning a couple of years ago with a really bad shoulder injury. Yeah, I couldn't raise my arm above my neck. So rock climbing became very difficult. And I saw all kinds of experts. They all told me to stop if I wanted to preserve shoulder health. And that was not the answer I was looking for. Right. So I became my own advocate. And I started looking for answers on how to heal my body, but also heal my mind. And I found some great advice. And I worked hard. And I'm at a great place now where I am almost rediscovering the joy I had with climbing, with being outside. I reoriented my life a couple of years ago. I used to have this, let's say, more mainstream career around tech. I used to live in San Francisco, and I started this podcast and this platform around healthful aging and being able to continue doing these sports that we love as we get older. And I was able to, tap into, let's say, the minds and hearts of some great adventure athletes and ask them these questions. And I think those questions have come back and have informed my own journey, where I now am going through this fun, let's say, life pivot. I am living out of a van, traveling through North America. And as we speak, I am in Wyoming, a great place to be in the summer, heart of the Rockies. And I've been climbing a good bit. I've been training a fair bit as well. And life seems to be on the up and up.
I want to make a kind of a public service announcement, Kush. Even if you think you're 23 on the inside, and maybe you really are 23 right now, this podcast, this episode is still for you. And I say that because time spares no one, as we've already said. And if you can learn in advance ways to care for yourself, then I think you'll be better equipped to continue enjoying the things you love to do for decades and decades more. And so hopefully, if you're young and you're strong and invincible, bulletproof, like we all are at that age, then you'll say, well, I'm still going to listen to this one, and I'm going to put that on the shelf for when I need it later. But I think one of the things I learned, Kush, through my life experience is that the way that I treated or mistreated myself when I was younger eventually did catch up with me. So there are things that you can do as a young person, a young man, a young woman, that'll make sure that you'll have a better experience later. And so what do you know about that approach? The idea of how do we care for ourselves over the decades to maximize longevity in the sports we enjoy?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, I'll start, maybe I'll talk to this part about what are some things we can do when we're younger.
Sure.
The honest truth is a lot of it we cannot do. When we are in our 20s, life feels invincible. We are surrounded by like-minded people, and we can get away with, all kinds of transgressions of our body. We can push aside, and I think some of that pushing is healthy. I mean, I think most of it is healthy. I think that's what creates the skill. That's what creates the temperament. That's what creates the love of our sport.
Yes.
Some of us can get away without getting injured, and some people are just gifted with, let's say, incredible connective tissue, and maybe some of us also are intuitively self-aware on things we need to listen to and either start doing or stop doing with our bodies. I think the rest of us usually have a moment where life kind of punches us in the face, and we realize that all those little niggles, squeaks, impingements, pains that would go away quickly in our 20s would go away a little slowly, but would still go away in our 30s, no longer seem to disappear in our 40s. In fact, things which had disappeared, sometimes come back. And I think it is to almost develop this kinesthetic sense and how to listen to our bodies and how to know when to stop, how to almost talk in this language of love with this machine that we are given and learn to take care of it. And, there's so much information out there, but I do think it makes sense to listen to experts and even get help from coaches, from others more practiced in our sports on what they have been able to do to be able to keep this fine-tuned machine running for the long term. I don't want to sound too vague, but I think, the most important thing is never forget the reason why we started doing this sport in the first place.
Yes.
It could be it could be any type. It could be cycling, it could be surfing, it could be mountain biking. We started that because we wanted to be outside. We wanted to feel that rush. We wanted to feel the air on our faces. We wanted to be in beautiful, majestic places. And I think that is something we need to remind ourselves, is to turn around and check the view when we are at the anchors of a climb. And I think that's something I forgot. And I think that is so important to keep our mindset intact, because at some point, one is not going to be able to go faster or climb higher grades or surf bigger waves. But if we get back to, this is what I love about the sport I'm doing, I think it helps us overcome almost anything out there.
I had a bit of a wake-up call, and I don't want this to be about me, but I'll give this as in way of example, and then you can comment on it. A year and a half ago, I was skiing, and I was going about 40 miles an hour on hard-packed snow, and someone cut in front of me, and I put on the brakes as best I could, but what ended up happening is they skied over the top of my skis, and then I came to an instant stop, which, of course, catapulted me off my skis into a perfect swan dive onto the ice. And so I ended up with a severe concussion. It took 6 to 9 months to be able to function normally again. And now I still realize I have some lingering symptoms. But the funny thing is, Kush, this is the point of the story. I went to an occupational therapist to try to aid in my recovery. And she says, you can still do the things you love, but you may need to do them in a different way. I wasn't ready to hear that. I still wanted to be the guy that was, careening down the mountain a little bit too fast. But as I've pondered it more, I've realized when you get injured and you're sitting on the bench, you're not doing the sport you love. And if you do the sport you love in a way that you can avoid the injury, then you don't have to sit on the bench. I mean, that's pretty easy math, right? Pretty easy math. And the other point of that story, Kush, is she says, well, how many concussions have you had? And I was like, well, I've never been diagnosed with one before. She goes, yeah, but how many times have you had these symptoms? And I looked back over my life, and I was shocked. I had no idea. 8 times. So I had suffered 8 concussions prior to the big one, and they're cumulative in their effects. So this is about aging and about making wise decisions when we're younger. One of the reasons why this experience lasted as long as it did was because I had had so many other minor concussions previous, right? So it was a lifetime of accumulated injury. And I'm saying this for the people who are younger. When I was young, the question I usually asked myself was, I wonder if I could do that, and I'd try it. Now the question I ask myself is, I wonder if I should attempt that. And I don't try it because I've realized that we do end up paying for the injuries that stick with us. So all of that said, what advice do you have to people? What's the right decision matrix or the right way to approach the sports we love?
I think the right way is kind of what you said. Do all of the things you can to continue doing the sports we love, and also being strategic, and stop doing those things that keep us from getting benched. I actually listened to Alex Honnold speak recently, right? And Alex is known as, let's say, the foremost free soloist of our generation. And you would think that the guy, he can climb anything, no matter how high. And he was talking about how he was recently at a climbing gym in San Francisco, bouldering. And the walls in these bouldering gyms over the decade, don't ask me why, because I don't know, they just keep getting taller and taller, which means that you're risking bigger and bigger falls if you come undone at the top. And Alex was saying that he got to the top of a couple of boulder problems, and it had committing moves for the top out, and he is maybe 15 feet above the ground at this point. And he decided not to finish. He decided to, humbly climb down back to the ground. And I think the lesson here is that we need to be self-aware. And if the world's, if somebody like Alex decides that this is a risk that's not worth topping out, we can also build that awareness in us. Should we really go down over this, huge black diamond hill in front of us? Or in maybe your case, do we really need to go and ski down this hard-packed ice chute? And I think life has this way, like in your case, you had multiple concussions before this last one delivered, let's say, this wake-up call. And we just need to listen to that and be strategic. I think the best athletes out there are nothing if not extremely calculated about the things they choose to do and things they will not do. And I think we need to look behind the headlines and look into their stories. And there are many things people will not do because those things will not help them continue doing their activity or their sport.
There's a lot of wisdom there, Kush. I'm with you. People say look before you leap, and I tend to think this had to be beaten into me, okay? Because this was not my natural inclination. But I had to begin to think about the what ifs a little bit. What if I don't make this difficult move? What's going to be the consequence? Sometimes you don't want to think that way because it feels like limiting thinking. It's like, well, if I start worrying about what's going to go wrong, I won't be able to do anything right. And I totally get that, especially with sports like technical rock climbing. But I've had to start reminding myself that sometimes the consequences aren't worth, that next thing. And so it's a matter of not just thinking, looking before you leap. It's a matter of thinking a little bit further down the road. How many months am I willing to be on the bench if I don't make this move? How long am I willing to sit in a chair with my leg propped up because I snapped my fibula or whatever? It's like, oh, that's not worth it. So that's really been a help to me, actually. So
not to be a Debbie Downer. Risk is part of adventure sports. You can be the healthiest doing things that you do successfully every day, and you can trip over the curb on the way to the bike park, right? So it's not to always be pessimistic. It's to just be a little self-aware. And sometimes you have to listen to your heart, and sometimes you have to listen to your brain. And there are days when you can get away with doing a difficult maneuver because everything seems right. But then there are days when you could fail at something which seems really simple and something you would not fail at. And I think developing some sort of a mindfulness practice or something that allows us to tap into that flow state where we are executing and will be successful versus those other times when we are not executing because we haven't found flow. And I don't mean to introduce the concept of flow when it comes to, again, let's say looking after ourselves. I bring that point up where if we are able to subconsciously tap into flow more often than not, then we are less likely to also get hurt. and we are also more likely to have a good time. So yeah, I think that's what I want to leave us with here is self-awareness and strategic thinking and mindfulness that allows us to find flow as much as possible. Because I think end of the day, all of us, doesn't matter what our sport is, I think we are chasing flow.
Yeah, that's good. Matter of fact, I heard Alex say something about that in an interview years ago where he was talking about there are days when it's just not right, and those are the days when I'm like, not today, And we need to listen to that. But how do we become self-aware enough to be able to say, no, this is not the day. It's not that I can't do this. I've done this before. It's that today is not the day to try.
For sure. I mean, people like Alex and others, they also spend so much time and energy in that practice of their sport. And I think you do something that much, I think you do develop that ability. And I'm no Alex, but I think I also have that. And I'm sure you have that as well. And, Alex, for all his, huge accomplishments, he has such a high base level because people think that, yes, he's, he has this altered mind state. He's genetically, yes, he is genetically gifted, but he has also put in, those 10 million hours. I exaggerate, but he's put in that time where his base level of being able to solo, like, let's say, easy to moderate grades for him and for us, that would be like climbing a ladder. So I think that's what allows us. It's like you have to just do your sport and not just do, not just climb the hardest climbs or go down the most epic ski runs, but also do things which are, what they call, what's that expression they use in cycling? Zone 2 stuff. Like you just have to do a ton of zone 2 stuff. And I think that's what allows us to flow. That's how we build that foundation. That's how it allows us to then find those moments when we exceed that and, do a really hard rock climb or something similar in your chosen sport.
There's a lot to be said for that. I encourage a lot of athletes, especially people that like the skiing, snow sports, that sort of thing, that are not from Colorado, but they come here and they've been watching all the epic skiing films from all over the world. And they think, I want to do that. And they see the perfect slope or the ski run that just looks so epic. And the reality is that until you've put in those base hours like you're talking about, maybe it's not time to jump into that yet, especially if you're in the backcountry, because learning how to judge the conditions for safety and avalanche awareness and those sorts of things is so uber critical. But this applies to all adventure sports. When you see the Red Bull athlete doing something totally amazing, it is amazing, and I celebrate that. But the amount of time that they put into their skill and their sport and learning how to do it and the strengthening that's required for that to be successful. I mean, until you've put in those hours, don't try the thing, right? So sometimes these amazing athletes show us what's possible, and that can be a long-term pursuit for us. But I'm just trying to forward the idea that just because someone can do it doesn't mean you should do it. You might not be ready for it. Well, Kush, let's go into a little bit more of your story. I want to hear more about rock climbing and what you do with that. I saw somewhere that you began exploring the Himalayas before you came to the U.S. Is that right?
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together, training, aging, mindset, and all, you will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, I grew up in a large city in the shadows of the mountains in India. Grew up in Delhi, and my family would take us backpacking and exploring hill towns in the Himalayas as a kid. And I think that is what created that early love for both the mountains and also for adventure. And I took that and started doing some mild to moderate mountaineering, mostly self-taught. And at some point, I realized that I wanted to acquire the technical acumen, learn how to rock climb, so I could go and do like big objectives, because that's what I dreamt about. I used to devour mountain literature, and I was absolutely fascinated by the idea of alpinism and big mountains. But when I started rock climbing in right earnest after moving to the States, I realized that I just loved moving my body over stone. I just loved climbing so much that I was okay just focusing full time on rock climbing, and I was getting, let's say, all the benefits of, in my mind, of adventure and movement with less risks that are present in big mountains, big objectives, where the exposure over time can often be catastrophic. I haven't completely given up on those ideas. I do a bit of alpine climbing, but just rock climbing. And who knows, maybe a decade from now, I'll get back into the bigger mountains. But for now, I'm totally stoked on climbing. I still love getting out. I actually went on a bouldering expedition to do some discovery stuff in the upper reaches of the northern Himalayas, and got away with some, let's say, high altitude trekking, and that was great. So yeah, technical rock climbing combined with safer type of mountaineering seems to be my jam these days.
That's fun. So just as an overall, how has rock climbing contributed to your life? How's it made your life better, would you say?
Ooh, geez, it's given me so much. I think at the outset, like I mentioned, I came to the US as, this bushy-tailed young grad student, and I didn't know anybody. And climbing gave me community at the
right.
Right at the outset. I was able to connect with people I met in this country and bond with them at a level that I would bond with anybody from any part of the world. Being in love with the same thing, practicing the same thing, going on long trips, car rides, camps, trying the same, let's say, puzzling sequence high above on some obscure rock wall in West Virginia. I mean, those were some foundation experiences I had that I will cherish forever. I think another thing that climbing has been amazing, like I was never a gifted athlete. Like I was the maybe the last kid they would pick when choosing soccer teams in junior high. Like I was just not very good at sports. And I think climbing allowed me to excel. And I think it gave me a newfound love and appreciation for sports, of being good at something in a physical way that I didn't have before. So, and now I think at this point in my life, it's given me this beautiful new direction. I mean, I was able to find the purpose and the resolve to take whatever I've learned from both the world of rock climbing and surfing and other sports, and what I learned from the world of business, and maybe, I don't know, bring that together in a way in creating this podcast and this community. And I just think that it's something that I will have for life. I mean, who knows, how our bodies are going to fare, but I think I'll always be able to get joy from some kind of movement, and I will be able to rely on this community and the sport and these experiences for the decades ahead.
I think that's a beautiful example of what it's like to find the thing that you love to do. I'm always encouraging people to find their adventure sport, because it'll give back so much to their lives. But like you mentioned, the traditional team sports weren't your thing. That didn't really work out for you. But then you found the love of the physical activity of sport again when you started rock climbing. So what a gift it is to find your thing, whatever that might be. It could be bicycling, rock climbing, mountaineering. It could be running. It could be skiing. It could be, scuba diving. whatever the sport is that gets you out there and gets you engaged will give back so much to your life. And for you, it was climbing. But, for those who aren't familiar with climbing, let's do a quick little tutorial so that they kind of get a feel for it. Will you explain what the rating system is for the difficulty of climbs, the class system?
Oh, geez. Well, great question. I think that the moment you start using all your limbs, I think that's when you get into the 5.x territory in the Yosemite decimal system grading scale. There are different grading systems, and I think it's kind of a confusing concept when you are new to the sport. But let's just stick to the US. So we use something called the YDS. I think it came out of Yosemite. And most people, I think, with some reasonable level of fitness can start either outside or inside, start climbing 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, maybe on their first day. And as people start getting better and start spending more time, they will progress to what they call easier climbing grades, or climbing grades as a new climber, which could be in the 5.6 to 5.9 type of range. And then after that, yes, with more time, more application, you start ascending through those grades, literally and figuratively. One difference in the world of climbing, I mean, all adventure sports, they are so layered. Climbing has different aspects. You can go bouldering, which has its own type of grading system, where the difficulty goes up in the scale of V grades.
Right.
And those grades can go from, like, let's say V0, which being, like, let's say the easiest bouldering problem, all the way to, these days people have done up to V17. And when you're climbing on the rope, you can either go sport climbing, where you're clipping bolts with quick draws on a rope, which is usually, which allows a margin of safety because bolts don't normally fail. So when you fall, you will often not impact an object. You might swing into the wall, but that fall will be cushioned because you're using a dynamic climbing system with a soft belay, a dynamic rope. But then there's this other kind of climbing, which is called traditional climbing, which is the oldest type of climbing, where the goal is to go from the bottom to the top on a mountain outside. The grades are still the same, but let's say a 5.10 in sport climbing, when you're clipping bolts, would be considered an easy-ish grade. A 5.10 grade outside in the mountains in traditional climbing would be a more serious grade for experienced climbers. And the reason it would be more serious is because in traditional climbing, you are responsible for creating your own safety by placing gear in the rock, by being creative with seizing opportunities to add gear, which will protect you if you fall. And, as it seems apparent, if you don't place that gear well, or if you miscalculate the type of rock, or maybe the angle of the fall, things can go south quite quickly. So that's the type of climbing. Nobody's setting the route for you. I mean, there are lines. The lines are often identified. Like, you will be looking at, let's say, a rock face in Yosemite, and you know that particular climb could have like 4 or 5 pitches, and you would have a general sense of where each pitch will start and stop. But how do you get to the top of that pitch and to the top of the entire climb is entirely up to your competency and your creativity. Actually, the last type of climbing, I know your question was just about grades, but I felt I couldn't really do justice to your question without talking about different kinds of climbing. The most fun type of climbing in my mind is called DWS, or deep water soloing, which is, let's say, the most rule-free or perhaps the most pure type of climbing out there, because you're moving your body over a body of water on a rock face with nothing on you besides maybe swimming shorts and climbing shoes and maybe some chalk, and you kind of find your own line And when you fail at a move, you hit the water. You fall in the water, which makes for a softer catch than hitting the ground. And I find that to be the most expressive, beautiful, and fun type of climbing out there. I don't get to do it often enough, but when I do it, I do feel like a giddy young kid discovering climbing all over again.
That was an excellent overview of the sport. And I guess my next question is more along the lines of, it's not really why rock climbing is fun, but more along the lines of the unexpected aspects of rock climbing. For instance, when you were talking about finding a route, figuring out a difficult move, or setting the protection in a difficult place, there's a real problem-solving element to it. And I think a lot of people don't realize how mental of a game it is. Can you describe what that's like?
Absolutely. It is, in traditional climbing, finding protection and being able to place gear is vital, because that is what can keep you from making, or that is what's going to allow you to get home for dinner. If you do it badly and you fall doing that pitch, it could lead to disastrous consequences. So you have to evaluate a number of things. First and foremost, you have to be climbing on a route that allows for gear placement. So before you leave the ground, you do an assessment whether there are going to be crack systems or other places where you will have to place gear. Then you want to make sure you have that type of gear with you, either active camming devices or passive gear that you will use to protect yourself. Thirdly, as you are climbing, you want to find those right stances to be able to place that gear. If you arrive at a place where you can place gear, but you're too pumped or too tired to fiddle with your harness, get the right type of cam or nut out, you could fall while doing that. Another type of assessment you want to make is being conscious of the type of rock. So hopefully when you go climbing, most of the rock, or let's say established areas, the rock is mostly going to be solid. So if you place a piece of protection, when you fall, the rock is going to be able to absorb that impact, because when you fall, it introduces multiple times your body weight and fall force. So it can shatter rock that's already weak. So you want to assess that as well. And then what else? You also have to be careful about the amount of gear you have. If you use up in, let's say, a 200 foot pitch, if you use up all your gear in the first 100 feet, then you're like literally free soloing the rest of that. So there's a lot of calculation and strategy, and the way to go about learning that system is to be very, very slow and methodical. Like I have friends who started climbing, and I advise them to learn from, let's say, my mistakes. When I started climbing, maybe to share a bit more, Kurt, I was already a fairly decent sport climber before I got into track climbing. And those were, let's say, maybe the slightly bullheaded years, my early 30s. And I went and did this long multi-pitch at a place called Lover's Leap in South Lake Tahoe, where I made some really fundamental mistakes because I hadn't gone through the proper, let's say, apprenticeship process of all of those things I talked about. And actually, one more thing to add is one should always think about the weather and conditions, because in a single pitch or maybe more simple sport climbing experience, you can, if conditions turn sour, you maybe just one pitch off the ground, you can just bail and get out. But with traditional climbing or big mountain climbing, sometimes retreat becomes very difficult. And in my case, I ended up having to climb through a blizzard, and I took a big fall, an unexpected fall, and nothing happened. Everything ended mostly well, but things could have also ended with worse consequences, injuries and whatnot.
Right.
And I always think that, those mistakes that don't hurt you or leave permanent scars are so important, because they're gifts, because then they allow us to be better prepared. So yeah, I think anybody listening to this who is interested in exploring, climbing outside, and they're excellent clinics, excellent guides available all over this country and outside. Take advantage of those resources and learn things the right way, because those fundamental lessons and habits may ultimately save your life.
Yeah, those are good words. Thank you for that. You also do a lot of surfing.
For a long period, for many years, surfing was my primary sport. I moved to San Francisco a couple decades ago, and driving to Yosemite every weekend was becoming this long, tiring, 9-hour long round trip commute. And the ocean was 15, 20 minutes away. So
there you go.
Yeah. So I got into surfing, some of the best years of my life. I did not grow up by any body of water. So for me, it was this whole dynamic, magical experience, being out in the open water and finding rhythm with the ocean, with the swells, catching waves, learning how to catch waves. And by doing that, as a wonderful bonus, getting exposed to our beautiful coastline, seeing amazing life in the aquatic, and then maybe also, just like climbing, getting to travel all over the world and surf in some extraordinary places.
Surfing, I think, holds a little bit of romance that a lot of adventure sports just can't quite approach. There's something about the ocean and I guess the true wildness of it, the undulating surfaces and so many of the unknowns and the skill required just to catch a wave and stand up. That first step is that's a big learning curve right there. And but there's something so romantic when you see one of those videos of someone surfing the perfect wave, and maybe they're inside of the curl and, they put their hand out against the wave and they're brushing the surface of the water while they slip right through. I mean, there's some amount of beauty to that other sports just probably are jealous of, frankly.
Well, look at you getting swept away by that romance.
Yes.
Sounds like you have also dabbled in some surfing, Kurt.
Oh, very, very little. I have surfed, mostly body surfed, but I've always been landlocked. So on vacation, grab a board, rent a board, try not to kill myself with it. That's about that's the degree of my surfing right there.
Somebody far more skilled than me once said on this podcast, if you have been in the ocean and you have been caught by a wave and being carried by it, you have surfed. So it doesn't matter if you were on a board, without a board, if you have felt that rush of the current take you, you have surfed. So I encourage a lot of us, if you go to the ocean, get on a boogie board or just go out in the water and feel that beauty of that wave taking you.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So as you have aged, how did that change your surfing?
One thing that, yes, you remember I was talking about being strategic with choices as we get older. I have taken a break from surfing. The shoulder injury that I spoke about, it gets aggravated by overhead sports. I can get away with certain types of climbing, but surfing with its repetitive motion of over the head paddling really annoys my shoulder. So I have taken a break from surfing. I think the last time I went surfing, I was in El Salvador, I think a year and a half ago. And I took out a longboard and I caught a couple of waves. But no, I'm going through this maybe long-term rehab process. And I'm just biding my time because I know that there are waves out there. And I'm not close to doing other things to feel that joy of being in the water. So I think I'm going to pick up some other things. I tried something called wing foiling last year on a trip to Cabarete in the Dominican Republic. Amazing sport, and maybe a great sport for people who are who are having to contend with tweaky shoulders, because you hold that wing foil up in your head, above your head, and that's kind of all you do, and the rest of it is just skill. And so yeah, I'm super stoked for checking out doing more foiling sometime in the future, and maybe even doing other things like stand-up paddleboarding. And those are things that I used to not be open to. I used to look down upon. I'm like, hey, the purest form is being on a board and catching waves. But you kind of have to redefine your parameters as you get older. You have to think about like some doors. Yeah, you have to think about what doors are closed, but then what other doors may still be available, and you have to go out and seize them.
You've heard it said, I'm sure, that the best time to plant a tree might be 20 or 50 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. So I want to say that to our guests. It doesn't matter your age. The best time to have started your sport that you're interested in, it may have been 20 or 30 years ago, but the second best time is today. You might have to approach it in a slightly different way, but that's all right. You can still get all the joy. It's still there for you.
I interviewed this incredible adventurer yesterday. His name is Buzz Burrell. Big name in the world of running and adventure sports. And he's 73 now, and he just started learning how to e-foil at 70. At age of 70, he's learning how to e-foil. So people out there are doing it. Age. I mean, yes, age is more than a number. Anybody who says age is just a number has not crossed the age of 50. I haven't yet, but I know that I know that age is not just a number. But I think it's just being open to new things. I think it's being open to like trying new things, and the door to that is always open.
There's another thing that I've noticed, and I don't want this to be bad advice, so take it with a grain of salt. But as you age, when you stop is when it gets harder to start again. If you keep doing the thing you love and you do it in a safe, reasonable manner, then you can do it forever. But if you stop doing it, the time on the bench can set you back very, very quickly. I'll just say it that way. So I think if, as you age, you need to continue to do the things you love. Don't say I'm too old. Don't ever say I'm too old. Maybe say, I'm going to do it this way instead so I can still have fun. But I would encourage people, don't stop. Keep at it.
You're 100% right, Kurt. And don't tell yourself you're too old. Don't let other people tell you the same thing. The last thing I think we haven't touched on is just to mention is the power of community.
Yes.
If you surround yourself by like-minded people, let's say young at heart, adventurers, I think if you learn with them, do things with them, I think they are going to allow you to keep going longer because, hey, even if you're hurting one day, maybe going on this incredible, surf trip to Sri Lanka with your buddies is still amazing. It's still better than like most things you could do. So hang on to your friends and do things with your friends and find other people like your friends.
That's excellent advice. There's one other thing that I learned a few years ago. I was trying to keep up with my sons on the mountain bikes. They had better bikes than I did, and I was getting frustrated because my bike just couldn't perform like theirs did, and I didn't know how much of it was age or how much of it was my equipment, right? Of course, you want to blame the equipment, but one day I took a ride by myself, and I came back home, and I said, you know what, guys? My bike's not too slow. It goes exactly the same speed I do. And
love it.
What I was trying to say was the comparison game doesn't really help, right? You can enjoy going exactly the same speed you do. And maybe that's where more joy is located.
100%.
Well, hey, how can people keep in touch with you, Kush? We already mentioned your Ageless Athlete podcast. Love the name. I think that's awesome. But how else can they find you?
Yeah, I think the podcast is where people should start with. And if they continue being curious, I'm available in the usual places. On Instagram, it's Ageless Athlete Podcast. And the website is agelessathlete.co. And no, I think the best way to maybe get any benefit from listening to this podcast is go out there and keep doing your thing.
That's fantastic. So, Ageless Athlete, Kush Khandelwal. Did I say it right that time?
You
Khandelwal.
great.
Anyway, thank you so much, Kush, for being on the Adventure Sports Podcast. I had a lot of fun, and you're an encouragement to me, so keep it up. Until next time, get out there and have some fun.
Take care. Thank you. Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through Brad episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.